And action. Hello, TEL 711 and 703. Not trying to make you guys laugh. Anyway, my name is Sean Lazarus. I am one of the students in the group, and I am joined here today by Liz, Ariana. You guys want to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Liz. As you guess, I show up in the chorus as Mary, so I'm Mary slash Liz.
And I'm Ariana. Good to see everybody.
Awesome. All right, so this is Leadership Challenge number 4. And I'm going to preface and say that I have a pretty nasty cold, so I apologize to all of you in advance. You have to deal with me. Our provocative question this week is, how can I positively influence my community of practice through participation in, quote-unquote, broader configurations of networks? So, we have discussed a little bit and have some quotes that we think kind of interplay with that. And it's just some uh, beliefs and perceptions as well that go along with that. And I know Liz wanted to pick up first. So Liz, would you like to share your story or your perception?
Sure. When I first read the question, it resonated with me because actually for my leadership challenge last week, I had gone to a conference in the state of New Jersey. It's called New Jersey Texpo, and it's sponsored by the New Jersey Superintendents Association.
Okay.
So when I think about the idea of networking and how my community of practice might benefit from configurations of networks, going to that conference, I was able to meet with a lot of other superintendents and assistant superintendents from throughout the state of New Jersey. So we were able to talk about some of the common problems and challenges that we face. There were some presentations, so I also got to learn about some of the innovative things that districts are doing with technology. And they also had an exhibit hall with vendors, so I was able to connect with a number of different vendors that might offer services that would be valuable for our school. So I thought that was a really good and relevant example of how participating in other networks can help you to really shape and develop your own community of practice.
Wow, absolutely. I know for me, I've been, obviously, I'm part of the New York City Department of Education. I've worked for 2 different schools within the DOE. But one thing that our school really tries to do with incorporating that idea of technology, excuse me, that's my students, is this idea of bringing Google Apps for Education in. And one thing that we have focused on in basically trying to be more active in broader configuration of networks is being active within the Google Apps for Education conferences. We had one in October that was up in the Bronx, and there's actually another one that I just learned about yesterday in March that's going to be in the Upper East Side that my school is sending us to again because it's supposed to be advanced stages. All to bring back information and try to raise up the profile of the school and help the students kind of move forward. And just from the perspective of a New York City Department of Ed teacher, this question kind of threw me for a loop because the whole word network has many different connotations within the DOE. Mainly, our districts switched to networks, and we had networks of superintendents and other professionals looking over the schools. So it took me a little while to kind of wrap my brain around the different concepts of what this network was that we were talking about instead of the network that the DOE likes to talk about. So, Ariana, I just wanted to hear from you, just some thoughts as to what you were thinking.
Well, so one of the things that we are doing in our unit out of the Arizona Department of Ed, so I work for the early childhood unit in the Department of Education. We received last year. We received a preschool development grant. So it's a federal. It's an $80 million grant over the course of 4 years. And we actually, it's kind of funny, we are developing communities of practice with the programs that got selected to participate in the grant. And so one of the things that kind of resonated with me around this like broader configurations of networks is that's what we're trying to do with them. So we're trying to connect these programs, these little local programs, with other programs that are trying to do the same kinds of things, you know, that they're doing because of the grant. But then the goal is, you know, also to sustain that even after the grant goes away, so that these connections are made and so that the high quality that they're implementing continues, and that hopefully it spreads out into their community and it doesn't stay just with those programs. And so kind of some of the stuff, you know, when we were reading, you know, it talks about stagnating, like you can stagnate within your own community of practice if you're not continually trying to learn and grow, and being able to reflect on your own practices. So that really resonated with me, because that's something we don't want these programs to do, is we want them to continue growing and going out and networking. So we're kind of making those network connections for them right now, with the goal of them then sustaining it on their own once the grant goes away. So that's kind of how this question resonated with me in particular.
I think that's a great example. And I think if we tie it into the Wenger book, he talks about communities of practice being tied together in constellations. And as I'm listening to the types of things that we're sharing, one of the quotes, it's on page 129, and he's talking about social configurations being viewed as constellations. He talks about elements of discourses that travel across boundaries and combine to form broader discourses as people coordinate their enterprises, convince each other, reconcile perspectives, and form alliances. And I think that's kind of you know, what we're talking about, is how you can learn from other communities of practice, and each of the separate communities might grow within the larger constellation.
Yeah. One other thing that kind of resonated with me, and it's kind of funny because we're doing this by technology. This whole course, you know, this whole program is technology based. But on page 132, he talks about technology, and just because we have technology doesn't mean that we're now all magically connected with each other. He says something about it. It changes the scope of our engagement. It is not so much expanding its range as it is a series of trade-offs between forms of complexity. One of the examples he gives is, you know, you might be connected with somebody clear across the world because of technology, but you might not know who your neighbors are. So it's kind of this trade-off, and that was just something that kind of around those constellations, you know, and these networks that we form, they could be because of technology, but we might not then have a network with people that are right next to us. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
You know, it's something that as I was, you know, finding my quotes just from within the Wenger book as well, it kind of goes along with the whole idea of the constellations, and the quote that I found, and it plays with my whole history background in political science, but it's communities of practice create localities and boundaries that do not primarily reflect organizational politics, but instead reflect and shape organizational learning. That was on page 256. I just thought it very interesting that he has it, that it's in there, and it kind of plays with our idea of networks here. You know, the whole idea of creating the boundaries, in essence, is kind of a network in its own right, and how we kind of work through all that. And after reading that, I was trying to connect it to, and that's my boss. Sorry, it's all hours of the night. It's you know, trying to always connect it to my workplace, and because it's always easier for me to connect. And I think about, like, what do we do at the high school of fashion industries in the city that you know, kind of looks at that whole network idea, and some of the things that we do interdepartmentally. You know, we have focus groups which meet once a week for each of the subject groups. We have our usual department meetings. We have technology meetings. I'm on a technology committee for the entire school. We do intra-departmental meetings as well. So we're always trying to not silo ourselves and kind of work into the different networks in order to move the school forward, because a siloed department is, yeah, we're only looking out for the good of our department and not for, you know, the whole school in its own right, which that's what I'm getting at of this, that good leadership skills are reflected through a network or a community working together, and not just a select group taking care of their specific area.
That's it's really interesting you say that, because I'm a former social studies teacher and social studies supervisor. Yay, social studies! And I was thinking about, when I read, Wenger has a quote on page 169 that resonated with me, because he's talking about the marginal and peripheral positions that he mentioned in the community of practice. He talked about how the community of practice itself can be peripheral or marginal in position with respect to the broader constellations or institutional arrangements. Yep. And I couldn't help but think about how sometimes social studies is really like, it's like put on the bottom of the disciplines, because in New Jersey, I know New York is different because you have regions, but in New Jersey there is no test for social studies, where there is for ELA, there is for math, there is for science. So a lot of times we're like often relegated to the bottom, and there's, you know, this big focus on STEM and STEAM, and often I do feel like social studies is very much marginalized as a community of practice within the larger constellation, which is unfortunate.
And you know, I'll totally agree with you, because even in New York we get it. Well, we have two Regents exams. We have the global history exam and we have the U.S. history exam. And the students take social studies. We're the only subject that the students take all 4 years. Has to happen. They have government and economics in senior year. But still, we have these issues of, you know, always having to prove ourselves, you know, because we're how do we muster up to the STEM programs, to the, you know, the mathematics and the science, and, you know, everyone has to write the same way and talk the same way and read the same way, but, you know, we never think about the importance of the social sciences. You know, in particular social studies. I mean, the first thing I always tell my history students when they come in every year is to look at a specific quote I have on the wall, and that's "History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes," from Mark Twain. I like that. I like that smile. It's really important to think of it that way, because, you know, we can learn all we want about these specific subjects, and I know I'm going on a tangent, but if we don't have the understanding of how we got to where we are, and it helps with the whole network idea as well. If we don't understand how we got to where we are now, we can't move forward together.
Yep. Well, and you know, one thing, so with our early learning standards, so we have preschool standards here in Arizona, and we actually have social studies. We have a whole social studies standard and strand, and it's not one we get trainings or requests for a lot, but it's something that we try and help teachers to understand. Talking of networks, how you can connect all the other learning areas. You can do math in social studies. You can do language arts in social studies. You can talk about science, and so making those connections for kids, I think, is really important. How all the subjects are very connected together, and we shouldn't look at each one of them in silos, just like we shouldn't function in silos. So.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. We are running quickly out of time. So is there anything else you guys wanted to add or throw out there as last remarks?
Nope, not me.
I'm okay.
Not it? All right. Well, TEL 711, signing off. See you later.
Bye.
Good night.